Take another photograph and document a life that's right. And ways consist of simple things, the days of black and white. And faces from a humble past at one with
Hello,
the
ladies and
ground.
gentlemen. Welcome back yet again to Talkin Guff podcast. What's up? The lighting is a bit funny. One of the bulbs has gone a bit funny, and I don't know how to change them. My mate Tommy put them in, so I'll have to give Tommy a call, I suppose. But breaking news. Breaking news. Yevgeny Prigozhin has been named on the flight manifest of a plane that has gone down on the way from Moscow to Petersburg, St. Petersburg. We spoke about Yevgeny Prigozhin before. He's fucking lunatic head of Wagner who staged a mutiny against the Russian Defense Forces about a month ago, I think. And then a deal was struck that he would go to Belarus, neighbouring Belarus, and just fuck off now. And we had said at the time that there could be a couple of things going on there. Either he's going to get killed, or it could in fact all just be a smoke and mirrors operation to get him into Belarus, only 100 miles from Kiev, with all of his Wagner fucking sledgehammer wielding fucking lunatic mercenaries. And so now they're reporting that he has been involved in a plane crash. I thought it was odd that he was even going from a plane from Moscow to St. Petersburg, considering he'd been exiled to Belarus, but apparently he's been running around without a care in the world, protected by this new deal that he struck with Putin in the midst, or in the aftermath, should we say, of that coup d'etat that he was executing there. And apparently I didn't realise this at the time, they shot down helicopters, killing helicopter pilots, which in fact outraged the Russian defense forces, or the military top brass in Russia. But anyway, yeah, he has turned up. Apparently a plane has crashed. They don't know why. It just went boom, dropped out of the sky. Some people are claiming that it was shot down by multiple air to ground or ground to air anti-aircraft fucking jobbies. I suppose we'll never know. We'll never even know if Yevgeny Prigozhin was actually on the plane. Apparently his right-hand man and co-founder of Wagner, Dmitry Utkin, was also on the plane. Look, fucking hell, huh? That's what we said would happen. So if he has in fact been on the plane that's been shot down, obviously Putin's just like, he has to go. Boom. Crazy stuff though, huh? And that seems to have panned out in one of the two ways in which we said it would, and let's see how it goes to pan out further. Yevgeny Prigozhin, apparently people are like on the Telegram channel or page, whatever, I don't know how Telegram works, associated with Prigozhin and Wagner, they called him a Russian war hero, and that he had been betrayed by traitors to Russia. So interesting stuff. Let's keep an eye on that and see how it unfolds over the next week or two. But breaking news. Also, I went to Comic-Con just about a week ago with my nephew, my young lad, and my young lad's mate from school, and we had a fucking absolute blast. We went to Comic-Con last year and it was very good, but this time it was just like perfect. We got in early, we were rocking around before anyone else had got in there. We were having the absolute crack. There's the first floor is just like all manner of things to entertain you, from vendors, comic books, figures, memorabilia and other such stuff, to beat the band. There's loads of photo opportunities like Ghostbusters and Stranger Things, and little sets that you can get into and have a photo taken. We were having our photos taken with owls, everything. It was fucking amazing. There's also an amazing energy to Comic-Con where everyone's just like really fucking sound and they just want to get photos taken with each other. We had loads of people coming up to my nephew who was dressed the whole time, never took his mask off once, as a character from some anime thing that I'm not aware of, and like people were like, "Here, your costume's amazing. Can we get a photo on?" He was thrilled to bits. He was fucking like thought he was a rock star. He was a rock star. They loved it. Even we were walking past a couple of lads on one stage, and they were like, "Look at your man's costume. It's deadly, isn't it?" And he was just like this. Yeah, it is. I was just like, "You're a fucking gangster, bro." And then they have like loads of stuff. They have like a whole floor of artists, people who who create art associated with Comic-Con, and from comics that they're writing themselves, from like proper professional comic book writers and illustrators, to just people making artworks and pieces of art that are comic based, I suppose, and are relevant to the comic convention. And then another amazing part of it was that there was meet and greets, and you had to pay money for these meet and greets. But I tell you, right, Linda Hamilton, aka Sarah Connor from Terminator 1 and 2, was there. Robert Patrick, aka T-1000 from Terminator 2, was there. And Michael Biehn, aka Kyle Reese. He's also Johnny Ringo in Tombstone, and he's in multiple Alien movies, but he's Kyle Reese in Terminator 1. And there's a little flashback to him maybe in Terminator 2. And we're standing there, and my young lad's like, it's €60 basically to go and meet Michael Biehn and get an autograph. And my young lad had money in his pocket from his birthday a month or so ago. He's like, fuck it, I'm going to meet this lad. I'm like, that guy's famous. We just watched Terminator 1 and 2 the day before Comic-Con, and he was pumped. He was hyped. So I was like, right, cool. So as we're sort of going up to him, it's €60, like I said, to meet the Fiend and get an autograph. And my young lad picked out this fucking deadly sort of miniature version of the Tech Noir Terminator 1 poster, 80s to the fucking max. And we go up and we fucking meet Michael Biehn. Oh yeah, but hold on. As we're going up, I noticed that there's a combo. You can get a photo as well as an autograph for €90. €90 combo deal. And I was like, listen, boo. You pay the 60, I'll pay the extra 30, and you get the photo and all, right? So we rock up and we fucking meet Michael Biehn, and it's amazing. It was so cool, and I have to say, Michael Biehn was a total beaut, an absolute total gent, real nice, really fucking sound to my young lad, really sound to me as well, and had a nice little natter with him for a few minutes and got a photo. And I'll put the photo here. Boop! How amazing. Did you see that? That's him. That's Michael Biehn. That's fucking Kyle Reese, Johnny Ringo, whatever his name is in Aliens movie. Someone told me he's in every Aliens movie bar the first one. I don't know if that's true. God bless him. He looks like he's lived a Hollywood life, you know what I mean? He's probably seen the bottom of a few bags, if you catch my meaning. There was a Troy McClure energy off the guy, you know what I mean? But amazing, total gent. Big up to Michael Biehn. Thank you very much, sir, for being such a gent with me and my son. And then we went upstairs to the auditorium and listened to this Q&A with all three of them, and they talked about the Terminator franchise experience. It was fucking amazing. Comic-Con, best day ever. Next time it's back in March, you should go. It's just the absolute crack. There's crack to be had for all types of people, from all demographics. Right, I've got a funny little story to tell you about a thing that happened in the restaurant there a few weeks ago. I meant to say it in the last podcast, but I forgot. And it's just like, it's a microcosm, or it's a pretty, microcosm is potentially the wrong word, but it's a story that will communicate to you, people who don't work in the service industry, just how ignorant and rude people who come to restaurants must be, and how unhappy they must be. Or sorry, it's how ignorant and rude some people who come to restaurants are. How they conduct themselves is deplorable. And it also demonstrates how unhappy those people must be to go out to dinner with their family and conduct themselves in a rude and fucking vile manner. But anyway, I'll get on with it. We're doing a steak at the moment in the restaurant. Beauty, triple cooked baby potatoes, 10-ounce strip loin steak, Cafe de Paris butter, like a brined green peppercorn sauce. And we also do these onion rings that are like fucking onion donuts, because what we do is we make the onion rings, fry them in the delicious beer batter, and then when they're fried, I take them out, already made this onion jam that I've strained all the onions out of, so I'm just left with the jammy, oniony flavoured jam liquor gear, sticky fucking deliciousness. And I pop the onion rings in that, so they're like a glazed donut, and then we sprinkle dried shallots over the top of them, so they're like this, like I said, like a donut version of an onion ring, and you get them with your steak, and it's fucking mint, right? So we've got the back of the evening broken. It must be about 20 past 8. Only another couple of tables to come in. When the young lad, front of house dude, comes in, and he's a young guy. He's sound. He's got a lot to learn, but his heart is in the right place for definite. And he's a nice guy, you know. And he comes in. He's like, Ruben, this lad's been a total prick. He says that his steak was well done, cold, and he wants to know what the chef has to say for himself. Ooh, that one got my back up a little bit. What has the chef got to say for himself? It's aggressive. And I feel like backed into a corner a little bit. So I was like, look, let's have a look at this steak and figure it out, right? He's like, okay. So he brings out the steak, brings in the plate, should I say. And first thing I noticed that 100% of the garnish, all the onion rings, the sauces, and the potatoes are eaten in their entirety. There's about 30% of the steak left, and that 30% includes the fat cap. So, you know, most of the prime meat from the steak has been eaten. And there's sort of one couple of little bits and one sort of chunky bit that have been at the end of the steak, entwined with the gristle of the fat cap, if you will. And something just doesn't look right. And I'm like, yeah, it doesn't look medium rare. But then I sort of, like, upon closer inspection, I was like, wait, hold on a minute. When was this ordered? And I checked the dockets, and the steak could have been ordered an hour ago. So it's sitting on the table 40 minutes. And then I realised that, oh, right, that's just what it looks like. It just looks a bit tired because it's been sitting on the table for 40 minutes. So I cut the last remaining end of the steak right through, like cross-section through it, and splay it open. I was like, Jesus, that steak obviously was cooked to medium rare at the time, because you can still see that it had been medium rare. It's just 40 minutes later. So I explained to Connor, I said, look, Connor, we temp all the steaks. This steak would have been temped to about 52 degrees Celsius, 55-ish, and then rested. And for a few minutes under the lights, and then served. And obviously the steak has been returned 40 minutes later. It's still obvious that the steak was, in its existence or in its genesis, a medium rare steak, and now obviously 40 minutes it's gotten cold, because the hottest the steak is ever going to be is like 60 degrees in its whole existence. And so I am confident that I've done my side of this, I've done my part of the job correctly, and I'm unsympathetic to this guy's complaints an hour after he ordered the food. So Connor goes out, explains to the man exactly what I've said in a super diplomatic and politically efficient way. And that's that. As far as I'm concerned, it's been dealt with. About 5 or 10 minutes later, I walk back out onto the floor to have a look at the res diary to see, in fact, when will the last 2 tables I know I have coming be in the restaurant, and sort of get an idea as to what we can start breaking down, etc. And as I'm walking out to the till where the res diary is, this guy fucking jumps up. He's right in my face, you know what I mean? Obviously incensed, and he's like, you're the guy who thinks he knows what he's talking about when it comes to steaks, is it? And straight away, I'm taking it back. I've already had to listen to what does the chef have to say for himself when I've done exactly what I meant to do, and now he's in my face in the middle of the restaurant floor telling me I don't know what I'm talking about, effectively. And so I was like, look, sir, I'm confident that I did my job correctly, and I don't really want to get into this, but considering the situation, I think it would be prudent of me to tell you that I still have the steak. And I was like, I can show you why I think it was cooked correctly. And he's like, yeah, come on then, show me. His whole energy was just quintessential fucking English tosser, like aggro. And his wife and daughter, 15, 16-year-old daughter, are standing there. And so I was like, no problem, sir. So I walk him through to the side door of the kitchen and say, if you just stay there for me, sir, and I'll grab the plate and I'll show you what's what. So I bring the plate over to him. I say, as you can see, when I cut through the actual bulk of the steak was cooked to medium rare. It is obviously 40 minutes after the fact. It is cold, no doubt, at this stage. But originally, the steak would have been served medium rare, 55 to 60 degrees Celsius. And that's that, really. You've eaten 100% of the garnish, you've eaten 70% of the steak, and now 40 minutes later you want to tell me that it wasn't done correctly. You know, I can't really help you. And he's just like, that's not my steak. And I was like, what? And even lads standing either side of me now are just like, that are out of his peripherals, are just like, oh my god. Because now it's just like, right, this is impossible. An impossible situation with a fucking lunatic, or deeply unhappy human being. And so I said, sorry sir, what? And he's like, well, that's not my steak. That's not the food that I sent back, you idiot. And with that, I just put the plate down. I said, all right, sir, I won't be spoken to like that. I've done everything in my power to accommodate you in your complaint, and then you've resorted to calling me an idiot when the facts are too obvious to ignore. You will now have to leave the restaurant, because like I said, I will not be spoken to him like that. And he was a bit like, what? I was like, no, come on now. And I walked him over to the door very professionally and without any sort of element of aggro or acrimony, opened the door and said, there you go, sir, on you pop. And he said, I won't be back. I was like, no sir, you're not welcome back, actually. And went over to his wife and daughter and I said, your husband has been extremely rude to me. He's called me an idiot when I've explained exactly what is going on, and I've asked him to leave because I won't be spoken to like that, and I think it's probably best that you do the same. And off they fucking went. The next day the guy writes a review online, and it was just like, I just felt validated when I read the review, because this guy is obviously just like up for a ruck. And he's like, the basic sentiment of his review was that he had a problem, no one would take responsibility, and then he goes on to say, and I have to say, I was quite rude to the chef, and I apologise for being rude, but I'm only human, and I was incensed by the fact that no one would take ownership of this problem. It's just like, it wasn't a problem. You got exactly what you ordered, and then you decided that it was okay to talk to people, including the young man on the floor and myself, a fucking fully grown professional adult. You felt it was okay to be totally rude and to talk to us like we're total pieces of shit. It's totally unacceptable. And now obviously he's going home in the car and his wife's like going, you're a fucking dick. Oh yeah, because even his wife and child were like, oh dad, stop it, will you please stop. So they've obviously gone, you've made an absolute show of us, and you've have to call him, gotten in an argument in the middle of the restaurant with the chef and called him an idiot and all. What are you doing? And so his ego or his arrogance will not allow him to take responsibility in full for the situation. So he says in one breath he's apologising to me for being a rude vile pig, and then in the other breath is validating being said rude vile pig because no one would take ownership. That is just one little incident of what it's like sometimes, what people have to deal with within the service industry. We're not servants. It's the service industry, but we're not servants. You hear Anthony Bourdain talking about these sort of people who are in a bad mood before they even turn up at a restaurant. Like, what sort of a human being would go to a restaurant with his wife and daughter and be a total prick to everyone? It's like, you're meant to be having a nice time. So anyway, look, bizarre. I never had one that sort of like overtly aggro and sort of dickish. And no, I won't say what his name was, but he knows who he is. He's in his 50s, from the Talkin area, grey hair, English dude, top prick. There's a tune on the go out there, right, called Rich Men North of Richmond. And it's by a guy, and I'm really sorry, it's either Oliver Anthony or Anthony Oliver, I can't remember. But these rich men north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just wanna have total control. Wanna know what you think, wanna know what you do, and they don't think you know, but I know that you do, 'cause your dollar ain't shit. Tax to no end, thanks to rich men north of Richmond. And it's this fucking anti-woke fucking poetry, basically. He's a guy in the middle of the woods, down in fucking wherever he is in the United States of America, singing his fucking heart out. Absolutely. Singing his fucking heart out. And the song is amazing. The lyrics are amazing. They're full of double innuendo or double entendres, whatever the proper phrase is. And like, I wish politicians would look out for manners, and not just miners on an island somewhere. Like, this hits hard. Chap has balls the size of fucking coconuts. And it's an absolute beauty. And I mean, like I said, I was nearly crying the first time I listened to it in its entirety, and I listened to it like just non-stop for a couple of days. Fucking absolute dinger of a tune. And I think maybe the Guardian have been like, oh, this guy's right wing or whatever, because he's like, he says something about fat people, and he's terrible. He's right wing, you know, and he's not actually part of the solution. He's part of the problem. Well, it turns out that tens of millions of people have watched this song on YouTube alone, and gauging from the comment section, they too, millions of people have also obviously really connected with this song, what this man is saying, and they obviously connect with his frustrations. It's amazing. It's really deadly, and I implore you right now, go and listen to the song. It's on Spotify, but I listen to it on YouTube as much as I can, because that's heavily monetizable for the fella, and he's apparently already turned down an $8 million record label, and you don't need that shit these days. This is the world we live in. You got fucking 40 million views on your tune, you're gonna make bank. That's it. Fair play to you. Big up Anthony Oliver, or Oliver Anthony, I can't remember, and that's terrible, which such is life. But he's that line, I love that line, rich men north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just want to have total control. And one thing that I didn't really, or I felt as I was editing the last podcast, is one thing that I really didn't emphasize enough, was the idea that central bank digital currencies will mean absolute control. And obviously I snipped in a bit from a previous version of that podcast that I had already recorded that I was a bit lucid on and went off the rails a little bit, but I stuck that little snippet in just to try and really hammer home the idea that central bank digital currencies will mean total and absolute dominion and control for fucking normal everyday working class people. And I know I did say that, but I just really wanted to reiterate how dangerous it could potentially be for normal everyday people like you and me, and how, like, all of these stuff, it'll be like, this is great, it's real handy. Shut up! Fucking dog. But that's it. This is great. You're gonna love it. It's gonna be so handy. You'll be able to just like to boop 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 everywhere you go. And yeah, look, we'll know exactly what you spend your money on, and we'll be able to control what you spend your money on. And maybe if we don't like what you're spending your money on, we won't let you spend your money on that stuff. But apart from that, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be absolutely brilliant, right? And yeah, right now, look, it could have negative interest rates, because, you know, there's going to be times when we need to generate revenue within the economy, and we're just going to bang negative interest rates onto your central bank digital currency so that you have to spend it. It'll be great. You're going to love it. And yeah, it will have a sell-by date, so you can never get yourself out of, like, generational servitude. But don't worry, it's fine. And obviously, like, ultra-rich people will have found ways in order for their money not to be subjected to negative interest rates or sell-by dates, etc. There'll be LLCs and other crafty little fucking holdings, whatevers, that they can pump their money into, and that'll be great for them. But that's what it'll be. It'll be total control for the establishment. All your information will be on that blockchain. They're going to love it. They will love it. It'll all be on the fucking government-sanctioned blockchain that they can probably look at, and they can manipulate or fuck with your shit any way you want. Like I said, it'll just be like, no, what are you talking about? You don't have any money left. You got a podcast. You can make a podcast and you have no money. You know? And I will say that I feel the seeds for the infrastructure required for central bank digital currencies, those seeds were sowed during COVID. Like we saw in China, like if you were protesting, there was mass protests over the banks freezing bank accounts and money, and there was mass protests, and it was just like, anyone who was protesting, boop, you've all been flicked on to COVID positive. You better get in your fucking gaff right now. Right? And then with the central bank digital currencies, we're like, you're protesting. Boop. You've no money. You better get back in your fucking gaff now, or you won't have money ever again. And that'll be that. You'll die of starvation. How's that? How's protesting now? But another way in which that sort of total control and that ease and ease of application could be transposed onto is climate change, right? And I suppose that I am suspicious of the climate change agenda. And like, I feel like climate change should maybe be turned, the name should be turned into something else, whatever. What I will say is that I have no doubt, absolutely zero doubt, that human beings are really fucking detrimental to the planet and to our own existence on planet Earth. We're fishing the bollocks out of all the oceans. We're fucking throwing plastic around like it's going out of fashion. We're fucking, like, pulling all minerals and fucking ore and all manner of shit out of the ground. We're blowing shit up. We're fucking sending fucking hardcore tire fires into the atmosphere. You name it. We're doing it. We're total scumbags. Pigs. I've absolutely no doubt about that. I would never argue the situation. But I think this idea that we're going to destroy the planet is slightly ridiculous, and the idea that we're not too far into whatever fucking stupid malevolent behaviours and practices we've been perpetrating for however long, we're too far into that. Like, literally, in order to do anything about climate change or whatever, the planet, we'd have to give up everything. And that's them tossers standing in front of fucking trucks for Just Stop Oil. It's just like, there's probably countless ways in which you contribute to the detriment of our existence on planet Earth. And that's the thing. Like George Carlin says, the Earth is just gonna shake us off someday. It's been through fucking extinction level event, meteor impacts and ice ages and you fucking name it, mad shit. And we're just like a blip on the timeline of the Earth's tapestry of existence. We're nothing. We're totally inconsequential, indifferent factor of the existence of planet Earth. And we have it into our heads now that this is it. That, you know, we're going to fucking destroy the planet. It's not. We're going to destroy our own existence on planet Earth. And we probably deserve that. And I'm pretty sure we're way too far into it to fucking really do anything proper about it. Because, like, that's, like, it's all consumer. It's all consumption. We're not going to give up our consumption. We love it. Even those Just Stop Oil heads are fucking consuming in some way that is detrimental to our existence on planet Earth. So that is my take on climate change. And another part of my take on climate change is that I am suspicious of it because it is full of hypocrisies laden with legislation that means one thing for one person and another thing for another person. And I find it hard to see how the legislation put forward or enacted is going to combat climate change. Like, do we think we're going to tax climate change into out of existence? Of course not. That's a fucking ridiculous and preposterous hypothesis. Like, we've got climate czars like John Kerry and Bill Gates running around on private jets talking about climate change. It's fucking outrageous. We got all those philanthropists in fucking Davos talking about climate change and how they're gonna fucking save the planet, and they're all flying around on private jets creating fucking outrageous carbon footprints. But then those people get to offset their carbon footprints by buying land in impoverished nations, basically land grabbing off the poorest people on planet Earth and planting a few shrubs, and then it's like, no, it's fine. I can go around on a private jet. It's my guilty pleasure. Like, you know, that's hypocritical. And if you look at that, you go, well, no, obviously that's bullshit. I'm not gonna do what you tell me to do when you're obviously talking absolute shit. And, you know, we're gonna kill 200,000 cows, the greatest cows on planet Earth in this country. We're going to kill them over the next 3 years to combat climate change. And obviously that's fucking outrageous and ridiculous. Ridiculous. And what makes it even more ridiculous is the idea that the majority of Europe, as I understand it, imports all its beef from
South America.
Where they're A, chopping down the rainforest to facilitate the importation of said beef, and B, flying at 7,000 miles, creating a fucking outrageous carbon footprint. It's hypocritical. And when you look at that, you go, no, of course not. That's bullshit. Of course I'm not going to toe the line for a policy that's bullshit. And then when I look at, like, all the bogs here in Ireland, we're going to close the bogs, and I believe part of that was preservation order for the bogs, which maybe I'm down with to a degree, but I believe another part of it, or another factor of that situation, was climate change, to combat climate change. And yeah, we're going to fly biodiverse fuel 7,000 miles from South America, where again they are chopping down the rainforest to facilitate this fucking the production of this biodiverse fuel, and B, flying at 7,000 miles, creating a fucking outrageous carbon footprint that surely dwarfs getting your turf and briquettes from the bogs here in Ireland. Surely. So we could go on and on about those total, like I saw a video that I'm pretty sure is true of a car charging port in Ireland somewhere, and they follow it around the corner, the wire, and it's being powered by a diesel generator. You know what I mean? Like, we're powering all our batteries from non-renewable energy sources. Where the carbon footprint, and don't even get into the social, moral footprint, but the carbon footprint of creating those batteries is out of fucking, it's through the fucking roof, man. And we need X amount of plant machinery creating X amount of greenhouse emissions to get those fucking batteries. And like I said, that's setting aside the fact that little kids are fucking extracting that shit from the ground. It's a social issue. But like I said, when I see, and on and on and on, hypocrisies. And when I see these hypocrisies within the climate change agenda, I become suspicious. I'm like, oh, well, hold on a minute. Are you actually trying to save the planet? Or are you trying to generate wealth and power for someone else under the guise of climate change and doing the greater good for planet Earth? And you might be thinking to yourself, well, look, Ruben, you haven't really communicated or discussed how that could lead to sort of top-down dominion at the hands of the establishment, how the climate change agenda is going to result in total control of normal everyday people. Well, this is just, and again, I might be reading too much into this, but Infrastructure Ireland, I saw recently, there was an article about a proposed bill or whatever the fuck, protocol, whatever you want to call it, from Infrastructure Ireland, which I understand is a semi-state body. And they're talking about charging people €38 for travelling from Maynooth and the equivalent radius into Dublin city centre. And I just think that that's fucking outrageous. Like, I already pay for the car, pay road tax, which pays for the roads, pay insurance, pay for the NCT, pay for the fucking petrol, pay for the numerous lessons required to get the licence, all of that. The untold amount of, like, servicing, etc., the untold amount of, like, financial obligations tied to driving my car. I would have to pay an additional €38 just to travel into Dublin city centre as a result of this proposed bill from Infrastructure Ireland. And it says right there in the article, the idea is to force people out of their cars. And then if you wanted to drive from Cork to Dublin, it would cost you, I think, €132 in additional taxes or tolls or whatever you want to call it. That's a fucking disgrace. I'm a free man in this country. I'll drive wherever the fuck I want. Right? And aside from that, even if you think, look, it's not about that, Ruben, it's just about combating climate change. It's like, money is not going to combat this situation. Creating a dynamic where poor people have to bear the brunt of this legislation whilst rich people can pay €132 to drive wherever the fuck they want is not going to fix this situation. It was the same. We saw that stuff with COVID as well. If you had money, the COVID mandates were easy to manipulate or navigate than if you had no money. It's just always the same. The lowest rungs of the financial and social ladder get shit on the most when this legislation for the greater good of humanity is introduced all the time. All the fucking time. Johnny Rowan going around with fucking prostitutes on a private jet to France, here, wherever the fuck he wanted. You know, Boris Johnson and the rest of them having big fucking knees ups in number 10 and all. It's always and on and on and on and on and on and on. It's always going to be like that. And that's exactly what bills like this or proposals like this from Infrastructure Ireland promote. The idea that you can just get away with it if you got money. You can offset your climate, your emissions by, you know, having money, basically. And obviously then if you get really down into it, it's just like, it could just be like, well, you've been driving your car a lot this week. We're pretty sure you've just reached your carbon emissions quota for the week. You have to go home, turn the fucking lights off, and do nothing. And oh, you've already driven 50 miles this week. You can't drive down to Cork. You can't, like, what if some mad shit, emergencies and all are going on? It's just like, no, you've expended your weekly quota of carbon emissions. Like, and the thing about it is, it's like, and we mentioned this with the private jets and all, it's just like, I am nothing. I am creating fuck all carbon emissions in comparison to, like, huge multinational corporations that are creating massive amounts of carbon emissions from fucking airplanes, industrial applications, etc., etc., etc. Like, those are the people who are most detrimental to the planet. People who are making loads of money, and they're just like, we don't give a fuck. We don't give a fuck about any of that shit. We're making money. We're making bank here. This is capitalism. You can't touch it. Climate change my arse. So I'm not going to fucking eat shit with some rich wanker making a load of money from fucking creating massive amounts of carbon emissions, gets to fucking, you know, pay money effectively not to have to eat shit. It's bollocks, and it's coming potentially. I gotta be careful, right? And I will say this because a lad I know, mate of mine, was just like, look, Ruben, you basically said in that last podcast, not basically, you said adrenochrome real, you believe in it, and he's like, that's fucking, he said, you're touching on the Alex Jones territory here, because a lot of what you're saying is right, or you're making a lot of valid points, and then you just allow yourself to just spin out, like, you allow yourself just to spin out in between these sort of valid points in madness. And he's like, you know, I potentially think you've gone a bit too far there. And whether or not I agree with what he's saying there or X, Y, and Z, there was a part of what he said that really landed on me. There was obviously a kernel, or potentially more than a kernel of truth in this. He said something along the lines of, look, Ruben, you become so disillusioned with the world that you're willing to entertain things that ought not be entertained. And I thought that was really well articulated, and I thought that landed on me, because I thought there was an element of truth in what he was saying. And I suppose the last 2 years and what we saw via COVID really made me susceptible to sort of nearly believe or entertain anything, because I felt that we were living in a fucking outrageous narrative and an outrageous time where conspiracies seem to become fact almost, or like these sort of outlandish, futuristic, dystopian narratives looked like they were turning into fucking real life. And he's right. And I'm trying to make an effort to be more critical, I suppose, or engage in critical thinking as much with the material that I agree with or I find confirmation bias in. So I need to be as critical with that sort of information as I am with the information that I just outright don't trust or believe or sign off on, you know? And talking about climate change and bearing what I've just said in mind, we're going to have a little chat about the wildfires in Maui. Now, obviously, first and foremost, the wildfires are a fucking absolute tragedy in the 21st century. For a thing like a wildfire to fucking wreak that much devastation and fucking destruction is wild to think. It's like, to really put yourself in that situation and empathize with that is fucking crazy. Like, you know, just to see like one house burn, and the idea that people perished in that one house fire is fucking hard to deal with. But to think that thousands of houses and potentially hundreds of people have perished is fucking really sad, man. And it's and obviously, look, there's fucking really sad shit happening all over the world, but it doesn't take away. And because some people be like, well, what about this? And I'd be a bit like that as well, I suppose. What about the kids in Aleppo and X, Y, and Z? But this is sad, and I think we need to take a moment to appreciate that and to send love and positive thoughts to the people of Maui. So, I I've originally heard about the fires in Maui through like these conspiracy based posts that were being put. Like, that's how fast this shit on either side of the spectrum sort of happens, you know. And I had seen. So the point I'm trying to make is that I do want to talk about some of the things that the conspiracy theorists have been saying without aligning myself to them, and I've sort of broken it in to two subgroups of conspiracy and facts, because that's another thing my mate was just like, just the facts, Jack, just the facts, which is a reference to Kevin Spacey's character in LA Confidential, fucking deadly movie with Guy Pearce. Is it Guy Pearce? Yeah, and Russell Crowe. Who's Guy Pearce? Lieutenant Ed Exley, yeah. And Russell Crowe and the owl lad from That'll Do Pig, Babe, from Babe. And it's a star-studded cast, and it's a really good film, actually, from the 90s, I think. Check it out. Anyway, just the facts, Jack. First of all, I will just say, we'll talk about a couple of the conspiracy theories or conspiracy-based. I don't know how fire works, but I do know that it has to have a perimeter at some stage. And obviously, what falls inside the perimeter is fucking total death and destruction. And outside of that fire, everything will be fine. And you do see, you'd be wondering, how the fuck did all those houses on that side of the fire just not be affected? And all these ones were. And that is a point that these conspiracy-based heads, or the conspiracy heads, are making about the Lahaina fires. Because obviously, they keep putting videos basically like on how can cars be melted into the ground, and I never seen anything like it. I never seen anything like that, because they are fucking cars are melted into the ground. And I don't know anything about fire. I don't know what has to happen for that to happen, but fuck me, it was obviously super destructive. And people are going, how can cars be melted into the ground and trees, etc., are still standing in the peripheries? And I don't know how that happens, but I'm sure that it can happen. And obviously trees are living creatures full of water, and I don't think necessarily that they will just burn into nothing, because there will be I think you see photos of like the sort of petrified remains of trees, if you will, but they're still standing, you know. And then that was how it originally was framed, and then it was like, now people are like, there's still green on the trees. And look, I don't know how that works, but I do know that fire moves and weaves its way in a very fucking unpredictable and mysterious fashion. And there was then, and I will concede that this did look funny, but I'm not saying that I then sign off on it, but there was even like beach umbrellas with the awning parts still attached to them, unscathed, untouched, and all of the surrounding area, like within feet, it looked like was incinerated. Now, it's hard to gauge off these photos, etc., etc., and they could be photoshopped, right? Who knows? But does anyone know about fire out there in the world, and how realistic is it for it to like jump from spot to spot and get this house but not that house, and this house but not this tree, and etc.? I'm willing to concede that I don't know anything about fire, and that could probably be a thing, because you do see, it has to have a perimeter, as I said. But that's one thing that the conspiracy theorists are suspicious of, and some are even going so far to say that DEWs, direct energy weapons, have been used to start the fires in Maui. And there's a pretty unconvincing video of a laser beam, like 2-second video, GIF almost, pretty unconvincing looking GIF of a laser beam shooting into Maui, shooting right into Lahaina, right? And that's a fucking mad conspiracy theory, and not one that I'd be willing to sign off on or give credence to. Just saying that out right now. I just think it's interesting that, and like that guy said to me, how disillusioned people are, to believe that or think that. And I don't think their disillusionment is without doesn't hold any water, because you only have to look at the state of the world, and like I said, what happened during COVID really made me susceptible to like, well, fucking anything could be true now. And the other thing is like someday, and then you go, and they were this was what's that thing where they say they plant the seeds of it subliminally through media and other consumer products and stuff. There's a term for that, but there's lads going like, yeah, that's what this happened because look at this Mountain Dew Maui Burst, this soft drink that came out months ago. That's Mountain Dew Maui Burst, and DEW is direct energy weapon, and Maui did burst and all that. That's where you start to go, all right, mate, you've too much time on your hands. And so I'm not aligning myself or giving credence to or entertaining those theories. I'm merely communicating them to try and... I'm merely communicating them, right? The other thing that they pull out is that there's this idea that there was an... So I'm confused. Two events. One has happened and one to happen, and they're tech-based events. And these conspiracy-based dudes would be like... These are... One was an AI summit to initiate the first ever AI governance of a city or whatever, and they were going to do it in Maui, and the other was that they would turn Maui into a 15-minute city. So the narrative is that these fires were started intentionally to clear Lahaina and make way for this new AI governed 15-minute island, and there's evidence to support it because they've had the summits, or they've had one, they're going to have the other, and that's not true. There is a tech summit in Honolulu, I think, in another month or two, and there was some sort of tech summit or some thing where they invite private sector and public sector tech heads to mingle and share ideas and techniques, etc. And the idea is that it'll just improve the public service somehow. I don't know, right? But the idea that, and only one part of that had to do with AI and AI governance, and they're not actually implementing policy here, they're just discussing ideas, right? And I'm pretty confident with what I read that that's actually what's happening, and that there wasn't this summit to discuss AI governance of Maui and the 15-minute city, etc., etc., etc. Another thing that is strange, right, is this is going to have to land on both sides of fact and fiction. I don't know what the story here with this one is, but the conspiracy theorists are arguing that a book has been released and available on Amazon called Fire and Fury, and this is a book which apparently chronicles the wildfires of Maui in 2023 or whatever, and it was released only 3 days after, and that would make anyone suspicious, I suppose. If a book that's chronicling the wildfires and discussing their impact for climate change policy, if that book was released 3 days after the fires started, that would be a bit weird or suspicious. But then on the flip side of that, someone could have just created that whole narrative like on their own in their bedroom within Amazon. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pretend there's a book coming out to give fuel to the fan the conspiracy flames that this was all set up. And the idea is that if there's a book, then they must have already known about it. It was pre-planned. And so some nutcase could just be doing that just to fucking get people going in his bedroom. So I don't know, because I did click into it and it said book available, and I should have bought the book straight away, because when I clicked back into that page a few days later or the next day, it said page unavailable, 404, you know what I mean? And so the jury is still out on that. I haven't seen the book, but I have seen that it was on Amazon. But that's not to say that an actual physical book exists. So I would like to know, did anyone else hear about Fire and Fury, this book available on Amazon, and is it a real thing? And if it is a real thing, is that suspicious in some way? That's where we're coming from a conspiracy theory point of view. That's what the conspiracy theorists that I have seen are talking about on Instagram, etc. And obviously that all sounds fairly outrageous, right? The idea that this would be started via direct energy weapons, and facilitated in some way by the establishment. That would be a fucking outrageous idea. And that would be a pretty outrageous. If that turned out to be fact, you'd be like, what the fuck? You know, so. But what I will say is that there is a bit of backstory, and the backstory is rooted in fact that gives those theories impetus, if you will. And I'll just say, like I did say, like, unfortunately, so Lahaina is the town on that south coast part of Maui, as far as I'm aware, and it's got some of the most sought after beachfront property on the planet. As far as I know, the property in Lahaina is some of the most expensive and sought after property on planet Earth. I could be wrong about that, but what I'm pretty sure I'm not wrong about is that the locals of Lahaina, because basically the town of Lahaina is staunchly local. It's a local Hawaiian town, city, whatever you want to call it. And it's here. And then just past Lahaina, there's beachfront properties that belong to, like, Will Smith, Jeff Bezos, Oprah Winfrey, you name it. It's really popular with the Hollywood and political and financial elites of America, right? And unfortunately, the fire just stopped outside of those properties. And, you know, obviously I don't think, you know, I wouldn't be happy necessarily at the idea of all of those million super wealthy beachfront properties to be destroyed as well. But I would have preferred, I suppose, if the people with the resources, I would prefer, I suppose, if people with the most resources, i.e. Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Oprah Winfrey, etc., 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 I'd prefer if those people had their homes burnt down, and, you know, because they have the resources in place to deal with it, financially speaking, I suppose. I would prefer that their shit got fucked up rather than the sort of working class locals of Lahaina, you know. One thing that is definite is that the locals of Lahaina, the people who operate within the town, have been under pressure for years to sell their property to big time property developers, business interests, etc. And because they have requisite sort of fucking warrior cultural souls, they've been digging their heels in and they're not prepared to sell and uproot and move to other parts of Maui. This is their home. Lahaina is like the spiritual capital of Hawaii. King, I don't want to try and say his name because it'll be like, whatever, Winawaka go. He 200 years ago declared Lahaina the capital of Hawaii, and it has since changed, etc. But you know, for people, there's far too much at stake on a cultural level for them to give up their home there in Lahaina, right? And apparently, in the aftermath of this absolute disaster, where people have lost homes, businesses, family members, loved ones, etc., in the aftermath of that situation, those same property developers and business interests are calling the victims of the Lahaina wildfires and asking them to sell their property, apparently for cents on the dollar. And that is obviously fucking disgraceful, deplorable behaviour by the equivalent of our vulture funds in this country, the same type of people who are preying on the housing crisis, are preying on the fucking homelessness of normal everyday people in order to perform for their shareholders. Those same sorts of people are ringing up the victims of the Lahaina wildfires, trying to get their fucking land off them for a bargain. So that fans the flames of those conspiracy theories that we were talking about. I'm not saying that it validates them, but you can see why people would be willing to believe, would be susceptible to those ideas. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, I have it written again here in the facts column. It's like Fire and Fury, because I did see it available, but I haven't seen the actual book. But again, just to ask that question again, if that book existed, if it was released 3 days after the fact, would that be suspicious? One thing that seems to be a total fact about the situation as well is that there was a gross mismanagement on from the local authority. You know, a guy who I understand to be, I don't know if his title is something like chief emergency response dude or whatever. You know what I mean? He's the man in charge of emergency response and all of that jazz. And he has subsequently resigned because it seems that motherfucker dropped the ball in a big way. And again, I'm not trying to say that this was in any way a conspiracy, but he turned the water off, left the power on, and now they reckon that these wildfires could have been started by a downed power line. There was obviously a hurricane past the island, producing hurricane winds that hit the island, and there's footage of a downed power line potentially starting the wildfires, right? So this guy left the water on, left the power on, should I say, turned the water off. You would think it would be the other way around. They closed the freeway, which I think ended in a situation where people were actually being corralled onto Front Street, which is where those cars were melted into the fucking ground. It's where people had to jump over the wall to stay in the water for 5 hours to avoid the wildfires. It's where they're now opening cars to find whole families burnt to a crisp, incinerated. So that is obviously a logistical fucking disaster, a total fuck up. Also, they have like a huge siren system in place on the island of Maui. There's something like 350 sirens that alert people to incoming natural disasters, and it's usually related. I think it's put in place for tsunamis, but it can be used for anything, you know. And that was not initiated or engaged. And another fucking absolute blunder, it would seem, is that on the day the schools were closed, so the kids went to school. Sorry kids, school's closed, go home. And they went home and they stayed at home while their parents were in work, and they potentially died, and potentially as a result of mismanagement and poorly executed protocol. This was potentially way more devastating than it needed to be, or that it could have been. You know, it could have been a lot less devastating had sufficient and efficient protocols been enacted in a timely fashion. Like I said, that guy, I can't remember his name, who in fact has no experience in emergency response, public emergency response. He, I think, worked for the governor. He was a staffer for the governor of Hawaii, and that's where the criticism and backlash comes from. It's like, this guy was not qualified to do the job. He obviously, that becomes obvious in a most devastating way when we're faced with the situation we're faced with, namely the fire. Another fact of the situation is that there is officially 114 people dead. Very few of those people have been identified because of the extremity of the situation. They're totally incinerated, burnt to ash. But something I didn't realise until maybe just the day before yesterday, and this ties in with that the decision to send the kids home from school, is that there are 850 people unaccounted for in Lahaina. And I don't mean to be heavy-handed or cold when I say this, but I would assume that those 850 people are dead for the most part, because we're not talking about an earthquake with pockets of pockets of survival beneath the rubble. It's all ash. It's all just fucking hardcore incinerated ash. I never seen anything like the footage of Lahaina. It doesn't look like a fire, and I'm not alluding to any conspiracy or anything like that. I'm just saying, at a glance, it looks like a fucking war zone. It looks like Aleppo. It looks like that drone footage of Gaza. You know what I mean? It's fucking hardcore, man. Another issue seems to be, so like just to reiterate there, like this could turn into a situation where 1,000 people are dead and hundreds of those victims are actually children, which is so fucked up, man. Another problem, or another way in which there seems to be logistical or bureaucratic issues tied to the situation, is with regards to aid. And I've seen multiple videos of lads saying that they're trying to get through to people with aid that they've collected and gathered from other parts of the island, from other islands and on. And that they can't because they're not FEMA registered. Because FEMA have been put in charge of the humanitarian response to this situation. And if you're not, and so there are people saying that we can't deliver this aid because of the bureaucracy and the red tape surrounding FEMA and their involvement with it. And I seen a professional surfer living in Maui talking about this, and another professional surfer in Hawaii, I think Maui as well, but definitely within Hawaii, talking about this and how they're talking to friends of theirs who've been left effectively with nothing on the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth day, and nothing was happening. There was no action on the ground to combat their very serious situation in the aftermath of the devastation of the fire. And so locals, surfers and all these sort of heads have started just getting their jet skis and jet skiing aid into the bays, and you see footage, and this is legit, this is a fact of people desperate for fucking anything to survive their situation, running down to the beach and getting this aid, and it almost looks like it's illicit or illegal in some way. You know what I mean? They're smugglers. That's fucked up. And again, it's this bureaucracy and what would look like sort of unqualified responses to the situation on a local and national level. And another part of that, because obviously it's Joe Biden. Joe Biden didn't go down there for the first 6 or 7 days, and didn't say anything for the first 1, 2, 3 days. And then he gets on the television. He says, "Look, we're going to sort this out. FEMA have X amount of hot meals, which apparently aren't being delivered in real time as he's talking about it." He's there, FEMA are in charge, he's there, and we have also, the Biden administration have also greenlit a one-time $700 payment for every household affected by the fire. So every household that was reduced to ash is now eligible for a one-time $700 payment. And people are outraged about that situation, and the reason they are, and this is sort of how I know parts of what we're talking about are bullshit, is because in the same week that the Biden administration have guaranteed $40 billion for the Ukraine, they've only guaranteed or greenlit $700 per household, one time, for the people of Maui. This is in America. Hawaii's American. They're Americans who've had their homes destroyed, and you're offering them €700 per home while you send $40 billion more on top of the tens and tens of billions that you've already sent to the Ukraine so that people can die. That's all that money can achieve, is death and destruction. And that's why it's disgusting. That's how we know they're hypocrites who don't care about anyone's, because your own countrymen are in the shits, lost their homes, lost everything, and you're not really doing anything to help that situation, whereas you're pumping $40 billion and more into the Ukraine and talking about the hearts and minds of the Ukrainian people. It's just you're using them as collateral damage. They're fodder in your fucking financial game, in the industrial military complex. You're fucking absolute dirty dogs. There it is in plain sight. And for the people of Hawaii, it's a total slap in the face, and they're quite vocal about it. It's just how can you be pissing or shitting on your own people who are stuck in a terrible situation? Same for the people of East Palestine in America, where that fucking train crash happened. It's you're not helping these people, and you're pumping money under the guise of humanitarian efforts and the greater good. You're pumping money into a situation that can only beget more death and destruction. In fact, that's not all it can beget. It can beget more money for these fucking sociopaths who work within these companies like Raytheon and BlackRock and Lockheed Martin. And obviously BlackRock don't make weapons, but they're going to make a ton of money rebuilding the Ukraine. Probably the same in Hawaii. And the other thing is the Hawaiians absolutely hate Joe Biden. You see, he comes on, he starts talking about a fire that nearly, he tries to sort of empathise with the people of Maui and Lahaina by talking about this incident in his house one time where I nearly lost my 67 Corvette and my cat. And he's laughing about it. It's just you're so off your fucking rocker, mate, that you're incapable of empathy, and you're trying to just spin this with a smile on your face as if this anecdotal fucking account of a non-event that happened in your house and nearly made you lose your cat in your 67 Corvette. That's fucking insult to injury, bro. That's a mockery of these people's situations, and they know that. They're talking about it. Fuck Joe Biden. Another thing I saw was that it looks like that Elon Musk is actually probably doing more to combat or help the situation in Maui than the American government are even doing. Even though Hawaii is a state, Maui is a city, or Lahaina is a city in a state within the United States, and it's Elon Musk who's doing more on a practical level to help their situation. He's providing Tesla batteries to power these hubs. So and that's why I said about the fire moving in mysterious ways, because there's a bit where guys it's like that's the line. Look at it. We just happen to be on this side of the line. Everything on that side of the line is totally fucked. So there's these hubs within Lahaina that are helping people and providing resources that people need, just basic necessity shit that people need, as well as that sense of community. They're also gathering points for the survivors of the situation to support each other and to engage in that sense of community. And those hubs, those areas are being powered by Tesla batteries, as it happens, and internet required to communicate and orchestrate and mobilize, etc. That is being provided by Starlink. So big up to Elon Musk, huh? He's putting his fucking money where his mouth is, I suppose, and he seems to do that quite consistently. And so, props, you know. I seen, this is another fact of the situation, I seen a guy who I believe was an elder of some kind, because, you know, they're operating in a more cultural level. Same with a lot of these Polynesian heads, even though they're living in contemporary times, there will be traditional values still at play, like of elders and chiefs and shit like this, you know what I mean? And I seen a video of this elder, or whatever you want to call him, definitely an older gentleman, and he'd said, so the reason I'm assuming he is of some importance is he had just returned from a meeting with the governor and other members of the community and other outside interests, shall we say. And this guy's crying because he's like going, there's no conversations going on about getting people back into the Lahaina. All the conversations that I've just heard in that meeting were about all the conversations being had in the meeting that man had just come from me. This is what he said, was just like, they were only talking about fast-tracking permits to build houses in other parts of Maui, effectively like coming up with ways to ensure that the locals don't actually return to Lahaina. And we'll touch on that now in a minute. But I think a part of that really got me is how come people, like, how come businesses, companies, corporations, financial interests, whatever you want to call them, how come these property developers who are already ringing the victims of this situation, trying to fucking get a good deal on their land, why are they even in these meetings with the governor proposing that they fast track planning permission effectively to move these people away from their home? Culturally speaking and practically speaking, that is their home. That part of it stinks. Stuff like that stinks. And you could argue, like, people could argue that the reason they're so slow to enact this sort of humanitarian effort, the reason they're offering so little, is to get people desperate, is to get people's backs against the wall so that they're forced. Or, like, if you're, say for instance, if you're living in a tent, living on contributions from humanitarian contributions and all, and someone's like, oh, look, we're going to build you a new gaff over here and we'll even give you a few quid for that land over there. You're putting people in a situation where, practically speaking, they're under so much pressure, duress, they're being coerced, if you will, just into fucking off. And, like, you know, some people would go so far to say is that the government are complicit or a major part of that situation, and if they weren't, they would provide more resources to get this situation sorted, and they wouldn't let these vultures try and pick the bones of a fucking devastating situation. As far as I understand it, I've communicated the conspiracy aspects or conspiracy theories with regards to the Maori situation, and the facts or some facts with regards to the Maori situation. And I'm just going to say what I think will definitely come out of this. Like, I 100% think that this situation will be hijacked. Like I've just said, it'll be hijacked by private interests who come up with solutions to the problem that aren't in the interests of the locals of Lahaina. And I'm pretty sure, I'm going to say now, that those locals, those natives, the people who were born and raised in Lahaina, Front Street and the surrounding areas, they're not going to get back there. They're not. And I'm not saying, therefore, that there was some conspiracy at play to destroy the place in order to get them off their land so that they can build this 15-minute smart island that's governed by AI. I'm not saying that. But I do believe that those people, that those developers who've been putting pressure on the locals to sell up for many years, they're just going to take advantage of the situation. They're going to use their influence within the administration to make sure that they get what they want. They're going to hijack this thing. I also think that it'll be hijacked to promote a climate change agenda, and I think that's already happening. We've been told that this is a direct result of climate change, which is now being called, it's funny how the language changes. It's like goes climate change, climate crisis. Now we're living apparently in a climate emergency. You've already heard my take on that situation. And I believe that this will be used as another piece of evidence as to how dangerous climate change is and how much of an emergency this climate emergency is. And all of these factors or events will go toward initiating or enacting like this climate change policy that will be really bad or really detrimental to the lives of everyday ordinary people, like I've already discussed. And that top-down dominion will be used just to step on the necks of normal everyday people, and the technology, the infrastructure that was born out of COVID will be used for the infrastructure of central bank digital currency. That same infrastructure will be used to combat climate change and effectively just control every facet of your life. You're going to have a climate tracker which will document every fucking unit of energy you use and what you've used it on, etc, etc, etc. And I don't know about you, but I'm not into the idea. I'm not into the government. I'm not into the establishment, whatever you want to call it. I'm not into them cunts having that level of top-down control over me, having that level of transparency when it comes to what I do in my own private life. It has nothing to do with them cunts. Like I said, I think this situation and many like it will be hijacked to promote a climate change agenda, and that'll happen whilst, like I said, John Kerry and Bill Gates go around on private jets as climate czars telling us how to combat climate change while they're the fucking creating the largest carbon footprints on planet Earth. Give me a fucking break, right? And you know, it'll be weaponized. These situations are being weaponized against human beings. They're being weaponized by mainstream media. COVID was the same. They weaponized COVID to terrify the absolute shite out of you so you would do whatever the fuck you were told. And we were all treated like that. We all got done dirty like that. And if you don't think that the powers that be, the people who initiated those mandates and benefited hugely from them, if you don't think they look at those situations and go, oh, that was pretty easy, wasn't it? Let's make this a way of life. And that's what they do. Like Russell Brand says, if you create situations where people benefit financially speaking from emergencies or crises, then you're creating a situation where we need to be in a perpetual state of crisis. And what better way to do that than with this climate change agenda? It's just like, if you don't do what we say, the planet's gonna end, your fucking kids will die, everything. You know, people listen to that and go, shit. But that's the weaponization of a situation. All the wildfires this summer have been weaponized in the media to create fear. And now it actually turns out that those wildfires in Greece, they were started by human hands. The wildfire in Tenerife started by human hands. While wildfires raged through Portugal, they were arresting hundreds of people on suspicion of arson. While wildfires rage through Canada, they are arresting hundreds of people on suspicion of arson. I'm not saying that that's what happened in Mary. I'm not saying that therefore wildfires aren't an issue or anything like that, but I think they are being hijacked and weaponized in the media to terrify you and in order to garner more control. I think it's pretty obvious that that's what goes on. There's evidence, in my opinion, to support that hypothesis. The last thing I want to say, and I've said it already, but I just want to hammer it home again, like, these scumbags offsetting their carbon emissions by buying land in impoverished countries, that's bullshit. And climate change will never be tackled through taxes or sanctions or mandates. It'll only ever be taken advantage of to impose sanctions, mandates and taxes on normal everyday people like you and me. And we shouldn't let it happen. We shouldn't sit back and fucking bicker with each other while this shit is being done to us. I think we should come together, mobilise, and fucking fight the powers that be. Speaking of a guy who fights the powers that be, I alluded last time to a video in which a guy who had garnered information from a fucking pedo website on the dark web and handed that information over to the authorities was shocked to find out that nothing ever happened, and then X amount of time later some person connected to the establishment was caught kidnapping and raping a child or something like that. And I was like, oh, that's pretty erroneous of me to say. His name is Ryan Montgomery. He is known as the #1 ethical hacker on planet Earth. He is doing the shit he said he does. He's doing the shit I told you about last time. And I'm not saying that validates an argument that I put forward, but I just said that if I came across this guy again, I would discuss it, or I would mention it again, or reference him and the video I talked about again on the podcast. It's out there. Ryan Montgomery, check it out for yourself. Listen, thanks very much. Peace and love to all the people out there on planet Earth. Mwah!
And document a life that's right. And ways consist of simple things, the days of black and white. And faces from a humble past at one with the ground, the sound.